Chapter 31. Cao Cao lost no time in taking advantage of Yuan Shao's flight, but smote hard at the retreating army. Yuan Shao, without helmet or proper dress, and with few followers, crossed hastily to the north bank of the Yang. He was met by one of his generals, Zhang Yi, who took him in and comforted him, and listened to the tale of misfortunes. Next, Zhang Yi called in the scattered remnants of the army, and when the soldiers heard that their old lord was alive, they swarmed to him like ants, so that Yuan Shao quickly became strong enough to attempt the march to Jingzhou. Soon the army set out, and at night halted at Huang Hills. That evening, sitting in his tent, Yuan Shao seemed to hear a far-off sound of lamentation. He crept out quietly to listen, and found it was his own soldiers telling each other tales of war. This one lamented an elder brother lost, that one grieved for his younger brother abandoned, a third mourned a companion missing, a fourth a relative cut off, and each beat his breast and wept. And all said, had he but listened to Tian Feng, we had not met this disaster. Yuan Shao, very remorseful, said, I did not hearken unto Tian Feng, and now my soldiers have been beaten, and I was nearly lost. How can I return and look him in the face? Next day the march was resumed, and Yuan Shao met Pengjai with reinforcements, to whom he said, I disregarded Tian Feng's advice, and have brought myself to defeat. Now shall I be greatly ashamed to look him in the face. This tribute to Tian Feng's prescience roused the jealousy of Pengjai, who replied, Yes. When he heard the news of your defeat, though he was a prisoner, he clapped his hands for joy and said, Indeed, just as I foretold. How dare he laugh at me, the blockhead? Assuredly he shall die, said Yuan Shao. Whereupon Yuan Shao wrote a letter, and sent therewith a sword to slay the prisoner. Meanwhile Tian Feng's jailer came to him one day, saying, Above all humans I felicitate you. What is the joyful occasion, and why felicitate? Said Tian Feng. The jailer replied, Imperial Protector Yuan Shao has been defeated, and is on his way back. He will treat you with redoubled respect. Now am I a dead man, said Tian Feng. Why say you that, sir, when all people give you joy? The Imperial Protector appears liberal, but he is jealous and forgetful honest advice. Had he been victorious, he might have pardoned me. Now that he has been defeated and put to shame, I may not hope to live. But the jailer did not believe Tian Feng. Before long came the letter and the sword with the fatal order. The jailer was dismayed, but the victim said, I knew all too well that I should have to die. The jailer wept. Tian Feng said, An able person born into this world who does not recognize and serve the right lord is ignorant. Today I die, but I am not deserving of pity. Whereupon he cut his throat in the prison. Zhu Shu but yesterday was killed. Tian Feng ends his life, his fate fulfilled. The yellow river's main beams break one by one. Mourn ye that Yuan house, its day is done. Thus died Tian Feng, pitied of all who heard of his fate. When Yuan Shao came home in Jingzhou, he was with troubled mind and distorted thoughts. He could not attend to the business of government, and became so ill that his second wife, who came of the Liu family, and had replaced the first wife after her death, besought him to make his last dispositions. Now 3 sons had been born to Yuan Shao, Yuan Tan the eldest, who was the commander of Qingzhou, Yuan Zai, who ruled over Yuzhou, and Yuan Shang born to him by Lady Liu. This youngest son was very handsome and noble-looking, and his father's favourite. So he was kept at home. After the defeat at Guandu, the lad's mother was constantly urging that her son should be named as successor, and Yuan Shao called together 4 of his councillors to consider this matter. These 4 happened to be divided in their sympathies, Shen Pei and Peng Jai being in favour of the youngest son, and Xin Ping and Zhu 2 supporters of the eldest. When they met to consult, Yuan Shao said, As there is naught but war and trouble outside our borders, it is necessary that tranquillity within be early provided for, and I wish to appoint my successor. My eldest son is hard and cruel, my second is mild and unfit. The third has the outward form of a hero, appreciates the wise, and is courteous to his subordinates. I wish him to succeed, but I wish that you tell me your opinions. Zhu too said, Yuan Tan is your firstborn, and he is in a position of authority beyond your control. If you pass over the eldest in favor of the youngest, you sow the seeds of turbulence. The prestige of the army has been somewhat lowered, and enemies are on our border. Should you add to our weakness by making strife between father and son, elder and younger brothers? Rather consider how the enemy may be repulsed and turn to the question of the heirship later. Then the natural hesitation of Yuan Shao asserted itself, and he could not make up his mind. Soon came news that his son Yuan Tan was coming from Jingzhou with 60,000 troops, Yuan Zai coming from Yushu with 50,000 troops, and his nephew Gao Gan coming from Bingzhou with 50,000 troops to help him, and he turned his attention to preparations for fighting Cao Cao. When Cao Cao drew up his victorious army on the banks of Yellow River, the aged natives brought an offering of food and sauce to bid him welcome. Their venerable and hoary appearances led Cao Cao to treat them with the highest respect. He invited them to be seated and said to them, "Venerable sirs, what may be your age?" "We are nearly 100, replied the old villagers. "I should be very sorry if my army had disturbed your village," said Cao Cao. One of them said, "In the days of the emperor, hue and a yellow star was seen over by way of the ancient states of Chu and Song in the southwest. Yin Kui of Liaodong, who was learned in astrology, happened to be passing the night here, and he told us that the star foretold the arrival in these parts 50 years hence of a true and honest man here in the Yellow River. Lo, that is exactly 50 years ago. Now Yuan Shao is very hard on the people, and they hate him. You, sir, having raised this army in the cause of humanity and righteousness, out of pity for the people, and to punish crimes, and having destroyed the hordes of Yuan Shao at Guandu, just fulfill the prophecy of Yin Kui. The millions of the land may look now for tranquility. How dare I presume that I am he?" said Cao Cao with a smile. Wine was served and refreshments brought in, and the old gentleman was sent away with presents of silk stuffs. And an order was issued to the army that if anyone killed so much as a fowl or a dog belonging to the villagers, he should be punished as for murder. And the soldiers obeyed with fear and trembling, while Cao Cao rejoiced in his heart. It was told Cao Cao that the total army from the 4 regions under the Yuan family amounted to 230,000 soldiers, and they were camped at Canting. Cao Cao then advanced nearer to them and made a strong camp. Next day the 2 armies were arrayed over against each other. On one side Cao Cao rode to the front surrounded by his commanders, and on the other appeared Yuan Shao supported by his 3 sons, his nephew, and his leaders. Cao Cao spoke first. "Yuan Shao, your schemes are poor, your strength is exhausted. Why still refuse to think of surrender? Are you waiting till the sword shall be upon your neck? Then it will be too late." Yuan Shao turned to those about him, saying, "Who dares go out?" His son Yuan Shang was anxious to exhibit his prowess in the presence of his father, so he flourished his pair of swords and rode forth. Cao Cao pointed him out to his officers and asked, "Anyone knows him?" "He is the youngest son of Yuan Shao," was the reply. Before they had finished speaking, from their own side rode out Shi Huan armed with a spear. Other 2 champions fought a little while, and suddenly Yuan Shang whipped up his horse, made a feint and fled. His opponent followed. Yuan Shang took his bow, fitted an arrow, turned in his saddle, and shot at Shi Huan, wounding him in the left eye. Shi Huan fell from the saddle and died on the spot. Yuan Shao, seeing his son thus get the better of his opponent, gave the signal for attack, and the whole army thundered forward. The onslaught was heavy, but presently the gongs on both sides sounded the retire, and the battle ceased. When he had returned to camp, Cao Cao took counsel to find a plan to overcome Yuan Shao. Then Cheng Yu proposed the plan of the 10 ambushes, and persuaded Cao Cao to retire upon the river, placing troops in ambush as he went. Thus would Yuan Shao be inveigled into pursuit as far as the river, when Cao Cao's army would be forced to make a desperate stand or be driven into the water. Cao Cao accepted this suggestion and told of 10 companies of 5,000 soldiers each to lie in 10 ambush on 2 sides of the road of retreat. The arrangement of the ambushes were thus: on the left 1st Company under Zai Hudan, 2nd Company Zhang Liao, 3rd Company Lai Dian, 4th Company Liu Jing, 5th Company Zai Huyuan. On the right 1st Company was under Cao Hong, 2nd Company Zhang He, 3rd Company Zhu Hong, 4th Company Eugene, 5th Company, Daolan. Zhu Chu commanded the advance front. Next day the 10 companies started first and placed themselves right and left as ordered. In the night Cao Cao ordered the advance front to feign an attack on the camp, which roused all the enemy in all their camps. This done, Zhu Chu retreated, and Yuan Shao's army came in pursuit. The roar of battle went on without cessation, and at dawn Cao Cao's army rested on the river, could retreat no farther. Then Cao Cao shouted, "There's no road in front, so all must fight or die." The retreating army turned about and advanced vigorously. Zhu Chu simply flew to the front, smote and killed 10 generals, and threw Yuan Shao's army into confusion. They tried to turn and march back, but Cao Cao was close behind. Then the drums of the enemy were heard, and right and left there appeared 2 ambush companies of Gao Lan and Xiao Yuan. Yuan Shao collected about him his 3 sons and his nephew, and they were enabled to cut an alley out and flee. 3 miles further on they fell into another ambush of Yu Jing and Yu Jin, and here many troops of Yuan Shao were lost so that their corpses lay over the countryside, and the blood filled the watercourses. Another 3 miles, and they met the 3rd pair of Lai Dian and Zhu Huang barring their road. Here they lost heart and bolted for an old camp of their own that was near, and bade their men prepare a meal. But just as the food was ready to eat, down came Zhang Liao and Zhang He and burst into the camp. Yuan Shao mounted and fled as far as Kenting, when he was tired and his steed spent. But there was no rest, for Cao Cao came in close pursuit. It seemed now a race for life. But presently Yuan Shao found his onward course again blocked by Xiao Dan and Cao Hong, and he groaned aloud. "If we do not make most desperate efforts, we are all captives," said he, and they plunged forward. His second son Yun Zai and his nephew Gao Gan were wounded by arrows, and most of his soldiers were dead or had disappeared. He gathered his sons into his arms and wept bitterly. Then he fell into a swoon. He was picked up, but his mouth was full of blood which ran forth in a bright scarlet stream. He sighed, saying, "Many battles have I fought, and little did I think to be driven to this. Heaven is afflicting me. You had better return each to his own territory, and swear to fight this Cao Cao to the end." Then Yuan Shao bade Xin Pinyin Gu to as quickly as possible follow Yun Tan to Qingzhou and prepare to give battle to Cao Cao lest he should invade. Yuan Zai was told to go to Yushu and Gao Gan to Bingzhou. So each started to prepare armies and horses for repulsing Cao Cao. Yuan Shao, with his youngest son Yun Shan and the remnant of his officers, went away to Jizhou, and military operations were suspended for a time. Meanwhile Cao Cao was distributing rewards to his army for the late victory, and his spies were scouting all about Jizhou. He soon learned that Yuan Shao was ill, and that the youngest son Yun Shan and Shen Pei were in command of the city, while his brothers and cousin had returned each to his own. Cao Cao's advisers were in favor of a speedy attack, but he objected, saying, "Jizhou is large and well supplied. Shen Pei is an able strategist, and it behooves me to be careful. I would rather wait till the autumn when the crops have been gathered, in so that the people will not suffer." While the attack was being talked over, there came letters from Zun Yu. Liu Bei was strengthening himself at Runnan with the force of Liu Pai and Gong Du, and when he heard that Yu was attacking Jizhou, he said he would take the opportunity to march on the capital. "Therefore you, sir, should hasten homeward to defend Zucheng." This news disconcerted Cao Cao. He left Cao Hong in command on the river bank with orders to maintain the appearance of strength there, while he led the main part of his army to meet the threatened attack from Runnan. Meanwhile Liu Bei, his brothers, and the leaders, having gone forth with the intention of attacking the capital, had reached a point near the Rang Mountains when Cao Cao came upon them. So Liu Bei camped by the hills and divided his army into 3, sending Guan Yu and Zhang Fei with 10,000 troops each to entrench themselves southeast and southwest respectively of the main body, which he and Zhao Zilong commanded. When Cao Cao came near, Liu Bei beat his drums and went out to where Cao Cao had already arrayed his army. Cao Cao called Liu Bei to a parley, and when the latter appeared under his great standard, Cao Cao pointed his whip at him and railed, saying, "I treated you as a guest of the highest consideration. Why then do you turn your back on righteousness and forget kindness?" Liu Bei replied, under the name of Prime Minister. You are really a rebel. I am a direct descendant of the family, and I have a secret decree from the throne to take such offenders as you." As he said these words, he produced and recited the decree, which is known as the Girdle Mandate. Cao Cao grew very angry and ordered Zhu Chu to go out to battle. As Liu Bei's champion outrode Zhao Zilong with spear ready to thrust, the two warriors exchanged 30 bouts without advantage to either. Then there arose an earth-rending shout, and up came the two brothers, Guan Yu from the southeast and Zhang Fei from the southwest. The three armies then began a great attack, which proved too much for Cao Cao's troops, fatigued by a long march, and they were worsted and fled. Liu Bei, having scored this victory, returned to camp. Next day he sent out Zhao Zilong again to challenge the enemy, but it was not accepted, and Cao Cao's army remained 10 days without movement. Then Zhang Fei offered a challenge, which also was not accepted, and Liu Bei began to feel anxious. Then unexpectedly came news that the enemy had stopped a train of supplies brought by Gongdu, and at once Zhang Fei went to the rescue. Worse still was the news that followed, that an army led by Zia Hudan had got in behind to attack Runnan. Quite dismayed, Liu Bei said, "If this be true, I have enemies in front and rear, and have no place to go." He then sent Guan Yu to try to recover the city, and thus both his brothers were absent from his side. One day later a horseman rode up to say that Runnan had fallen, its defender Liu Pai had fled, and Guan Yu was surrounded. To make the matters worse, the news came that Zhang Fei, who had gone to rescue Gongdu, was in like case. Liu Bei tried to withdraw his troops, fearing all the time an attack from Cao Cao. Suddenly the sentinels came in, saying Zhu Chu is at the camp gate offering a challenge. Liu Bei did not allow his army to go out. They waited till dawn, and then Liu Bei bade the soldiers get a good meal and be ready to start. When ready, the foot went out first, the horsemen next, leaving a few troops in the camp to beat the watchers and maintain an appearance of occupation. After travelling some miles, they passed some mounds. Suddenly torches blazed out, and on the summit stood one who shouted, "Do not let Liu Bei run away. I, the Prime Minister, am here awaiting you." Liu Bei dashed along the first clear road he saw. Zhao Zilong said, "Fear not, my lord, only follow me." And setting his spear, Zhao Zilong galloped in front, opening an alley as he went. Liu Bei gripped his double swords and followed close. As they were winning through, Zhu Chu came in pursuit and engaged Zhao Zilong and two other companies led by Yu Jin, and Li Dian bore down as well. Seeing the situation so desperate, Liu Bei plunged into the wilds and fled. Gradually the sounds of battle became fainter and died away, while he went deeper and deeper into the hills, a single horseman fleeing for his life. He kept on his way till daybreak, when a company suddenly appeared beside the road. Liu Bei saw these men with terror at first, but was presently relieved to find they were led by the friendly Liu Pai. They were a company of his defeated army, escorting the family of their chief. With them also were Sun Kai and Jian Yong and Mai Fan. They told him the attack on Runnan was too strong to be resisted, and so we were compelled to abandon the defense, and the enemy followed, and only Guan Yu's timely arrival saved us from destruction. "I do not know where my brother is," said Liu Bei. "All will come right if you will push on," said Liu Pai. They pushed on. Before they had gone far, the beating of drums was heard, and suddenly appeared Zhang He with 1,000 soldiers. Zhang He cried, "Liu Bei, quickly dismount and surrender." Liu Bei was about to retire when he saw a red flag waving from a rampart on the hills, and down came rushing another body of troops under Gao Lan. Thus checked in front, and his retreat cut off, Liu Bei looked up to heaven and cried, "O heaven, why am I brought to this state of misery? Nothing is left me now but death." And he drew his sword to slay himself. But Liu Pai stayed his hand, saying, "Let me try to fight a way out and save you. Death is nothing to me." As he spoke, Gao Lan's force was on the point of engaging his. The two leaders met, and in the third bout Liu Pai was cut down. Liu Bei at once rushed up to fight, but just then there was sudden confusion in the rear ranks of the opponents, and a warrior dashed up and thrust at Gao Lan with his spear. Gao Lan fell from his steed. The newcomer was Zhao Zilong. His arrival was most opportune. He urged forward his steed, thrusting right and left, and the enemy's ranks broke and scattered. Then the first force under Zhang He came into the fight, and the leader and Zhao Zilong fought 30 or more bouts. However, this proved enough for Zhang He turned his horse away, recognizing that he was worsted. Zhao Zilong vigorously attacked, but was forced into a narrow space in the hills where he was hemmed in. While seeking for some outlet, they saw Guan Yu, Guan Ping, and Zhu Kang with 300 men coming along. Soon Zhang He was driven off, and then Liu Bei's troops came out of the narrow defile and occupied a strong position among the hills where they made a camp. Liu Bei sent Guan Yu for news of the missing brother. Zhang Fei had been attacked by Zai Huyun, who had killed Gong Du, but Zhang Fei had vigorously resisted, beaten him off, and followed him up. Then Yu Jing had come along and surrounded Zhang Fei. In this pass he was found by Guan Yu, who had heard of his plight from some of his scattered soldiers met on the way. Now they drove off the enemy. The two brothers returned. Soon they heard of the approach of a large body of Cao Cao's army. Liu Bei then bade Sun Kai guard his family, and sent him on ahead, while he and the others kept off the enemy, sometimes giving battle and anon marching. Seeing that Liu Bei had retired too far, Cao Cao let him go and left the pursuit. When Liu Bei collected his army, he found they numbered only 1,000, and this halting and broken force marched as fast as possible to the west. Coming to a river, they asked the natives its name, and were told it was the Han River, and near it Liu Bei made a temporary camp. When the local people found out who was in the camp, they presented meat and wine. A feast was given upon a sandy bank of the Han River. After they had drunk a while, Liu Bei addressed his faithful followers, saying, "All you fair sirs have talents fitting you to be advisers to a monarch, but your destiny has led you to follow poor me. My fate is distressful and full of misery. Today I have not a spot to call my own, and I am indeed leading you astray. Therefore I say you should abandon me and go to some illustrious lord where you may be able to become famous." At these words they all covered their faces and wept. Guan Yu said, "Brother, you are wrong to speak thus. When the great founder of Han contended with Xiang Yu, he was defeated many times, but he won at the 9-Mile Mountains, and that achievement was the foundation of a dynasty that endured for 4 centuries. Victory and defeat are but ordinary events in a soldier's career, and why should you give up? Success and failure both have their seasons," said Sun Kai, "and we are not to grieve. Jingzhou, which your illustrious relative Liu Biao commands, is a rich and prosperous country. Liu Biao is of your house, why not go to him?" "Only that I fear he may not receive me," said Liu Bei. "Then let me go and prepare the way. I will make Liu Biao come out to his borders to welcome you." So, with his lord's approval, Sun Kai set off immediately and hastened to Jingzhou. When the ceremonies of greeting were over, Liu Biao asked the reason of the visit. Said Sun Kai, "The princely Liu Bei is one of the heroes of the day, although just at the moment he may lack soldiers and leaders. His mind is set upon restoring the dynasty to its pristine glory, and at Runnan the 2 commanders Liu Pai and Gong Du, though bound to him by no ties, were content to die for the sake of his ideals. You illustrious sir, like Liu Bei, a scion of the imperial stock. Now the princely one has recently suffered defeat and thinks of seeking a home in the east with Sun Quan. I have ventured to dissuade him, saying that he should not turn from a relative and go to a mere acquaintance, telling him that you, sir, are well known as courteous to the wise and condescending to scholars, so that they flock to you as the waters flow to the East Sea, and that certainly you would show kindness to one of the same ancestry. Wherefore he has sent me to explain matters and request your commands." "He is my brother," said Liu Biao, "and I have long desired to see him, but no opportunity has occurred. I should be very happy if he would come." Kai Ma, who was sitting by here, broke in, "No. Liu Bei first followed Liu Bu, then he served Cao Cao, and next he joined himself to Yuan Shao, and he stayed with none of these, so that you can see what manner of man he is. If he comes here, Cao Cao will assuredly come against us and fight. Better cut off this messenger's head, send it as an offering to Cao Cao, who would reward you well for the service." Sun Kai sat unmoved while this harangue was pronounced, saying at the end, "I am not afraid of death." Liu Bei, the princely one, is true and loyal to the state, and so out of sympathy with Liu Bu or Cao Cao or Yuan Shao. It is true he followed these three, but there was no help for it. Now he knows your chief is a member of the family, so that both are of the same ancestry, and that is why he has come far to join him. How can you slander a good man like that? Liu Biao bade Kai Mao be silent, and said, "I have decided, and you need say no more." Whereat Kai Mao sulkily left the audience chamber. Then Sun Qian was told to return with the news that Liu Bei would be welcome, and Imperial Protector Liu Biao went 10 miles beyond the city to meet his guest. When Liu Bei arrived, he behaved to his host with the utmost politeness, and was warmly welcomed in return. Then Liu Bei introduced his 2 sworn brothers and friends, and they entered Jingzhou city, where Liu Bei finally was lodged in the Imperial Protector's own residence. As soon as Cao Cao knew whither his enemy had gone, he wished to attack Liu Biao, but Cheng Yu advised against any attempt so long as Yuan Shao, the dangerous enemy, was left with power to inflict damage. He said my lord should return to the capital to refresh the soldiers, so that they may be ready for a north and south campaign in the mild spring weather. Cao Cao accepted his advice and set out for the capital. In the first month of the 8th year of rebuilt tranquility, Cao Cao once again began to think of war, and sent to garrison Runnan as a precaution against Liu Biao. Then, after arranging for the safety of the capital, he marched a large army to Guandu, the camp of the year before, and aimed at Jingzhou. As to Yuan Shao, who had been suffering from blood-spitting but was now in better health, he began to think of measures against Zucheng, but Shen Pei dissuaded him, saying, "You are not yet recovered from the fatigues of last year. It would be better to make your position impregnable, and set to improving the army." When the news of Cao Cao's approach arrived, Yuan Shao said, "If we allow the foe to get close to the city before we march to the river, we shall have missed our opportunity. I must go out to repel this army." Here his son Yuan Shang interposed, "Father, you are not sufficiently recovered for a campaign, and should not go so far. Let me lead the army against this enemy." Yuan Shao consented, and he sent to Qingshu, Liuzhu, and Bingzhu to call upon his other 2 sons, and his nephew to attack Cao Cao at the same time as his own army. Against Runnan they beat the drum, and from Jizhu the armies come, to whom the victory will be seen in the next chapter.